Hello and welcome to the Ruth Back Fit podcast. I am very, very happy to be here as always. Although I did say that I was going to put these recordings up on YouTube now. And in the past, I haven't had to worry about what I look like when I'm recording my podcast. And I have hit record and here I am. And I've realized I've got no makeup on. I haven't brushed my hair. I've got my big headphones on, my nice baggy Carhartt jumper, which is standard, by the way. But in my defense, I am going for a run in a bit. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to be having a shower and putting makeup on before going for a run. Not that I really put much makeup on anyway. On that note, I am actually a bridesmaid this weekend at 42 years old. Yes, somebody asked me to be a bridesmaid. She's 26. So, this is quite a compliment to be asked to be a bridesmaid for a 26-year-old and her friends that are similar ages. So there's four of us, and I am by far the oldest bridesmaid. But the reason I mention this is because I'm having my makeup done at the wedding, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to cope with how I look with makeup on. I don't know. I wear so little makeup that I don't even know how to do it properly. So anyway, I'll take some pictures and see if you recognize me. I don't know if anyone else feels that they just don't recognize themselves when they're made up. Anyway, that's not relevant at all to what I'm here to talk to you about today. But, standard. Let's get to it though, shall we? I'm going to start with a question. I love starting with a question, just something to get you thinking about yourselves. Have you ever said yes to something and then immediately regretted it? I'm pretty sure most people are going to be going, yes, Ruth, of course I have, especially if you're somebody that has struggled with your own fat loss journey, maybe. It could be that you were saying yes to extra work, even though you're already stretched very thin. It could be that you were saying yes to helping a friend or family member when you really needed that break. And I find this a big one because I think often if we're not busy, we feel like we should say yes to these things because we've got no reason to say no. But actually, we've been busy the rest of the time and that was our time to recover. But we still feel like we've got to say yes. And it could also be that you were saying yes to cake at the office, not because you wanted it, but because it was there. Maybe somebody else made it and you didn't want to seem rude. At that moment when you're saying yes, it feels so much easier than saying no because it avoids that discomfort. It gives us that immediate gratification. You feel helpful, included momentarily, you get that satisfaction. And it lets you avoid guilt or any potential conflict. You don't have to explain yourselves. But it's what happens next that we need to think about, in that we feel stressed because we've taken on that extra work. We're feeling frustrated that we didn't protect our time, and we feel annoyed when we ate something that we didn't enjoy. And thinking about the time with the friend or family member, I know that in the past I would sometimes feel annoyed that people would ask me. They'd ask me because they know I'd say yes. And I'd think I never would ask them that because it would be too much to ask them. And I'd almost be annoyed. And then I realized that they will assume that if I'm saying yes, I don't mind. And I'm not letting them know that I am not happy to do this. I'm just saying yes, and that's on me. So just because I didn't have good boundaries didn't make it their fault for asking. It would make it their fault if they then made me feel bad about it after I'd said no, but they likely wouldn't have. So I felt like it was on me. It is easier to say yes in the moment. It's just that we're often saying yes to things that we don't actually want to do and don't make us happy. And that's where my no crap cake condition comes in. It's not about saying no to everything. It's about saying yes only when it feels. For years, I would eat things because they were there. And then one day I was like, if I'm going to have a cake, I want it to be good cake. This is easier when you've eaten your meals properly, because I would find that if you're not eating your meals, you're going to be picking at random snacks and blaming yourself, whereas actually it's probably because you're bloody hungry. But when you're doing that and you're finding that you're then having some crap packaged cake, that's dry, that's bland, and it's just because it's in front of you. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'd rather have something that I genuinely enjoy, have it less often, but more enjoyable. Taking time to think about whether it was good cake gave me a moment to kind of check in with myself and pause before acting on autopilot. And if we're thinking about cake, because I don't mind thinking about cake, for me, that would be things like, I'm not going to have this mini roll. If I know that at the end of the week, I can go to my favourite bakers and get my favourite bun. I'm all about the buns. Belgian bun, Chelsea bun, cinnamon bun, but again, got to be a good one, not just a packaged rubbish one. But if I can go to my favourite bakers and get a bun, then I'd rather do that. And I've done this recently, actually, in that I ordered some sweets. I'm a big licorice fan. And I ordered some sweets to come through the post. And actually this week, I haven't been having like a biscuit now and again because I'm thinking, oh, they'll be arriving. And because they feel more special because they're not ones you can get from everywhere, I'm going to try and savor those as well and not just like scoff them down in one, which I would have been known to do. So again, it's less often more enjoyable, no crap cake. And it doesn't just apply to cake. It doesn't just apply to sweets or sweet food. Other examples for me would be alcohol. Definitely. I'm not going to drink now just because it's there and because others are, and I'm feeling like I should or have to. I want to actually enjoy it if I'm going to drink. I want to have a really nice glass of wine, not just any wine. And I've got another condition with alcohol as well, which is not as a reaction to stress. But for you, it could be that you're like, oh, I'm going to have champagne once a month rather than the Pinot Grigio I don't even really like multiple times a week. It's something that feels really special so that when you're having it, you're not wanting to just neck the bottle and do it to get drunk. You're having it because you enjoy the taste. That's my alcohol thing. It's actually ended up meaning that I hardly ever drink. But I also like the fact that I can if I want to. Another one is social events. I'm not going to say yes to every invite. I look at my month now, and it used to be that I was booked up every weekend, either going away or multiple evenings because I was filling up that free time. I was chatting to a friend recently and she was like, I haven't got a free weekend until insert like 3 or 4 months down the line. And I was thinking that we had a really busy month or really busy few months because we had one thing on each month at the weekends, like one thing on while we were away. And I was like, oh, I should probably keep an eye on that. It makes me sound really boring, but I am just learning to keep an eye on my energy balance, and it doesn't mean I don't do other things in the time. It's just there's the big things. It's not more than really one a month of those planned in. I'm not going to say yes to every invite. If I'm going to spend that time and energy, I want it to be something that I really value. And often that is nice when you book those things in advance because it makes you do something that's great, that's better, rather than just same old, same old. And then there's work commitments. If it's not going to align with my priorities, which is going to be my helping my clients achieve their goals, having them feeling great, I'm learning to say no. Spreading myself thinly is only going to mean that I'm not showing up so well for them. And they are the priority. This no crap cake mentality is really about setting boundaries. It's about making sure our choices, big or small, are intentional rather than automatic. That is the plan. So the reason this no crap cake mentality can work in other areas of life is because there are so many areas that we struggle to say no to. Overeating, overcommitting, scrolling on our phones mindlessly. They aren't a lack of willpower. They're about habit loops, and that's loops that our brain has built over time. And it consists of 3 parts. So a habit loop is the cue, which is the trigger, what starts a habit. So that could be the time of day, an emotion, a location, or even another habit. So that might be feeling stressed at work, then the cue, and then we head to the kitchen for a snack, which would be the action, what we do in response to the automatic behavior that follows that cue. So opening the fridge, grabbing chocolate, eating it without any thought. The reward is a result, and that's why our brain is doing it on repeat. We love rewards. We love quick rewards, the feelings of satisfaction that reinforce the habit. So the biscuit that gives you a hit of sugar and dopamine, providing a temporary relief from stress. Over time, this loop becomes automatic, meaning that the cue immediately triggers the action, the eating, even if you're not really hungry. So those people that struggle with emotional eating, stress eating, and so on, they've had this loop and it's been carrying on for quite a long time. And I had a message from a client recently who was saying that she was annoyed with herself. She was feeling frustrated because she's been a bit more stressed and a bit more anxious. And she found herself reaching for food and not feeling great afterwards. And she was asking herself, like, why, when I know that this isn't great for me, am I still doing it? She's been actively working on changing this habit, reminding herself that there are other ways to handle stress. But despite that awareness, she's finding herself doing it. But here is the thing, it has only been 4 weeks of her working on this. And we spend years, sometimes decades, reinforcing these habit loops that we are creating. Expecting them to disappear overnight is going to be unrealistic. But there is an incredible win here. And that is that she's reflecting on it. And the reason that this is such a big deal is that before, this habit was completely automatic. She'd get stressed or feel anxious, not even think about it, and eat. Now she's noticing it in real time and questioning it. She's starting to feel this mismatch. She knows food isn't actually solving the problem. And that awareness is honestly the first step to change. It matters because every time that she's having this internal conversation, why did I do that? Did it actually help? How do I feel? Her brain is learning. Our brain has well-worn paths for certain behaviours. We can think of this as a motorway: stress and eat. We're going down the motorway to eat. But when we start pausing and reflecting, we're actually putting some roadworks along the way. Each time we're stopping and thinking, even if we still do that behaviour, we are weakening that old loop. The more that she has this conversation with herself, the more space she's creating between the cue, which is stress, and the routine, which is eating. And eventually the space is going to get big enough for her to choose something different. And these lessons start with the lesson starts with awareness, right? She's not failing, she's noticing. And that is huge. She's not stuck. She's starting to separate the action from the trigger. The more she questions it, the easier it's becoming to change. So if you're at this stage where you're aware of the habit but still doing it, don't be discouraged. This is part of the process, and reflection means that you're already on that path to change. It isn't going to be about stopping immediately. It's about creating space for choice. And it's just like my no crap cake rule, right? It's about asking yourself, is this what I really want? Because the more you pause and reflect, the more control you're taking back. And I'm going to mention just a couple of areas other than stress and eating where you might find yourself in this habit loop. I've written them down, but I don't want to list it just as and then this and then that. So a couple that I've written down: overcommitting and struggling to say no. This is an unhelpful habit loop that we can be in, and the cue will be that somebody's asking us for help or a favour. Our routine is us saying yes automatically, even when we're already too busy or overwhelmed. And the reward is that we avoid that feeling of guilt or disappointing someone, and we can see that they're pleased immediately that we've said yes. Often that doesn't continue because when we don't perform as well in the task, the people that we've said yes to can be frustrated. We're also feeling stressed afterwards. We're feeling overwhelmed. So it's good at this point to be reflecting on how it's made us feel. And you can have other strategies, other things that you've prepared in advance to help you in this situation. Let me check my schedule and get back to you. Or a favourite that I had recently is, absolutely, I can do that for you, but can you let me know which of these other tasks is no longer a priority so that I can focus on this, because I don't have time to focus on them all. Then you're kind of shifting that responsibility to someone else. Give yourself some time to think, for sure. Put in that pause in whatever way you can, even if it is, let me check and get back to you, if that feels easier. Another one I hear about a lot is that snooze on the alarm and skipping the morning movement, whatever it is that they intended to do. So the alarm goes off in the morning. That's our cue. Our routine is hitting snooze multiple times and then skipping whatever it is that we'd actually planned to do. The reward is that temporary part of extra sleep, but it normally leads to frustration later. And we're normally then starting the day in a bit of a mad rush. Your new cue could be alarm going off. And then this is one that was shared with me recently. And I believe it's Mel Robbins, the 5-second rule, but one of my friends actually shared this with me, and she is counting down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 now. And she has to get up by 1. And she said it's working brilliantly for her. I've got one of those Philips Hue lights on my ceiling, and I have an alarm that's connected to that. And it gently wakes me up with the light just going from blue and then gradually going to full brightness. It's very hard to not get up if you've got that. So I use that anyway. So I find getting up is okay because I'm quite sensitive to that change in light. My husband gets around that though by putting an eye mask on, so it doesn't help him. So I'm now going to give you some practical strategies for breaking those automatic responses over time. Remember, we're not aiming for perfection here. The first approach is one I've mentioned a bit already, which is pausing and reflecting in the moment. Creating that pause before acting it can help us make an intentional choice. But as I mentioned, my client was finding that she was starting to be able to pause, but she was still finding herself doing the action because it can take time. But you're asking yourself at that point, do I really want this? And there are studies that show delayed gratification, which is waiting a short amount of time, can actually reduce impulsive choices. It's like waiting for that lovely cake on a Friday instead of reaching for anything and everything that's around us. If we're thinking about having a treat, is something we don't have very often. I don't know if it still counts as a treat if we're doing it multiple times a day. And to add that pause in, you could go with taking 10 deep breaths before responding to a request. Maybe not loudly and to the person's face. Hang on 1 second. She says breathing, but internally just being like, I'm going to wait. If it's replying to an email, you could draft the email out and then commit to waiting and reading it again before sending it. You could use a favorite method of mine, which is pausing for 10 squats before reaching for a snack. Eventually, doing that can mean that you end up associating the squats with the feeling of feeling good rather than the food. It kind of replaces the thing. It's like, I'm feeling stressed and anxious. I'm reaching for a snack. I'm feeling stressed and anxious. I'm doing these squats first before reaching for a snack, but I'm already feeling better from doing those. And now it's the squats that are making me feel better, not the snack. And then the other question you can ask yourself, would I still want this in 10 minutes? I used to use this strategy many years ago. I used to like a full fat Coca-Cola, probably because I hadn't eaten enough during the day or whatever it was. But I'd really want this as a bit of an energy boost, caffeine, sugar, whatever, give me that spike. And I would go and buy it. And then I'd say, if I still want it later today, I can have it. But the thing is, I often didn't feel like it later today. I feel like with a Coca-Cola, there's a certain feeling. You want to have it. It's like cold in a glass. You want to be feeling like it. And I'd say, if I feel like it later, I can have it then. Often I get later in the day, didn't feel like it anymore. So I'd still have the bottle there and I go, okay, if I feel like it tomorrow, I'll have it then. And I'd have that conversation, and often I'd go days without having it. And then I'd have it when I really could enjoy it. So will I still want this in 10 minutes? Or am I going to want it more later? Another strategy that I've used with a client very recently is asking her to create a list of 10 to 20 things that make her feel really good. And these can be things that she can do immediately. That could be a stretch, getting outside for briefly, listening to a song, singing loudly, cuddling a pet, whatever it is. Or it can be planned actions, booking a coffee date with a friend, doing a hobby that you really enjoy, going to a class, whatever it is. Then when stress hits and she's feeling overwhelmed, trying to commit to one of the things that's on her pre-written list, look at the list, commit to doing one of those first before resorting to the old habit. Give yourself that positive reinforcement. Sometimes when your brain is full, it's hard to think of what else can make you feel good, but you've written this list when you feel good. And you can look at that and be like, I'm going to commit to trying that first. And then there was another strategy that I heard about in a book called The Happiness Advantage, which actually is worth the read if you haven't read it. The idea is that you want to make the desired habit easier and the undesired habit harder. So if you want to snack less, you would store the indulgent food, the calorie dense, more indulgent food, somewhere that is very inconvenient, out of sight, on top of a cupboard, at the back of a cupboard, somewhere that it's hard to get to. And then if you wanted to move more, you could put your shoes somewhere where you're literally going to be tripping over them. They're like in your line of vision. Or you get up in the morning and put your workout clothes on, even though you're not working out for a couple of hours, assuming you're not in an office job situation. Like today, I've got up and put my running clothes on, even though I'm not running until 11 o'clock today. It works because our brain very much defaults to the path of least resistance. I know that in the book, he mentioned how he didn't want to watch TV in the evening and instead he wanted to go for a walk. So he'd put his TV controls upstairs and he'd put his shoes where he could see them. Kind of the trigger was around the couch, I guess. And he would see those shoes and he'd have an option. Do I go back upstairs and get the TV remote, or do I put on my shoes and go for a walk, which is what I wanted to do? And we will choose the walk, even though if we think about it, going for a walk, putting on our shoes is likely going to take longer than walking upstairs. But the thought is that if the thing that we don't want to do takes more than 20 seconds, and the thing that we do want to do to start it takes less than 20 seconds, then we will go with the easiest option in that moment. So the shoes were right in front of him and the TV remote was upstairs. So have a think about what you can do in that situation. Always best to plan these things when you're feeling calmer. Don't wait until the moment when you're stressed. Have a strategy in place now. And that leads nicely into the last strategy that I'm going to give you, which is the if-then condition. If I feel bored/stressed, then I will insert whatever behavior. If I want to snack mindlessly, then I will do whatever behavior it is that you want to do. Because in that moment, when you're feeling stressed and anxious, your brain is full. You're not necessarily going to be thinking. That's why the list is helpful. That's why having those squats are useful. So if I feel bored or stressed, then I am going to do 10 squats. If I feel bored or stressed, then I am going to remove myself and go and sit here for a moment. Now, in advance, know what they are so that when that feeling comes about, the trigger then becomes something you've pre-thought out. And then the more you do that thing and you realize you feel better for it, the easier it becomes to do it. I want you to remember before I leave you that perfection is not the goal. The more that we reflect and adjust, the stronger that these new habits are going to become. The no crap cake rule. Yes, when I thought of that, it was about food, in particular cake, but it applies to all areas of lives. It's about setting standards. It's about being aware of the food we're eating, but also the impact on our time, energy, mental health, and so on. Every time that we're creating a pause, we are building new pathways in our brain, leading to long-term change. So on that note, here is a challenge for you. Where in your life do you need to apply this no crap cake rule? What's one habit loop that you want to interrupt this week? Remember, it's not about saying no to everything. It's about saying yes to the things that make you feel good. By saying no to some things, you're giving yourself more times to say yes to others. Be aware that you only have so much room, so much time, so much energy for a certain amount of things. And it's making sure that the ones that you choose work for you and what you value. And if you need a little help achieving your goals, then I would love to help you. And you are in luck because we have a new intake in Ruth McFit starting on the 24th of February. And you can sign up now and find out more by heading to www.ruthmcfit.com, or you can reach out to me on Instagram at ruthmcfit. Thank you very much for listening. Until next time, speak to you very soon. Goodbye.